You're good, you're good. So I'm gonna have to ask everyone to grab some food now. I'm actually gonna bring it up.
Oh, I was thinking I go food, grab some food, I go across the street.
Let's do it.
Yeah, I didn't even know that it is, oh, shoot, brilliant. Nice.
Oh la la, this looks good.
Wow, smells good. It feels
I do
good.
this is my workout.
Wow, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
For the pizza.
Even Shub. Even Shub. You know, I'm trying to figure out why this we need to start it.
Is it touched? Oh,
Okay, so
A
this
little.
is a double from this one. Wow, that is nice of her.
就是那个一定要慎重，就是说，其他的话都好说，就是说价格。
Oh, you're so welcome. Dig in. Oh, I want to ask you, for those who are viewing outside the academy,
Yes.
I'm going
This
to
on
be
the
talking
screen.
about this. You might want to throw this out there somehow. Okay.
Okay, I hang myself up.
We need Shub, yes. Give us serviettes and plates.
I read my mind because I was about to go quickly grab something across the street. No, you're here. Robert,
No.
Yes.
oh, thank you so much.
So fair.
The condo. Oh, from David. Also.
Now we are the best. As you said, you can get it.
反正我其实我认为，万一这个万一就是说撞大运或者谁知道？
No,
好，拜拜。
It's so warm. I thought, okay, I don't dress. Long johns on, straight collar and underneath.
All right. Still breathing? Oh, yeah.
You must have a son or twin brothers.
Good, good, good. How about yourself?
How are you? Good. Yeah, they go to the same place at the same time.
Yeah.
How are you doing? How are you? What is that from? Anybody here?
Yeah.
You. That's good.
I didn't pay attention to the regular topic. I said, I need to have that.
I'm not actually going to go.
It's just for,
Actually,
maybe if you're gonna go down in the
oh, okay,
woods,
so maybe,
right, just this mouth.
Yeah. okay, okay. Yeah, that's good.
The 2-page, so whoever's home and at the offices.
Maybe I would scan and send over some hard copy.
I will to all offices right now. I've just scanned it to mine so that everyone can get it. We'll get rid of this one. If you want, there is a clicker, but if it was a PowerPoint, it would have been useful. We'll leave it like that, okay? I'm gonna dim the front lights for everyone. All right, just a minute of everyone's attention. We will get started. Most of you know Stephen Shub, very famous real estate lawyer in our area, not only, okay? We'll cover the topics of what is currently also happening in the pre-construction industry. Basically, what are the current market flows for builders? Kind of explain to you, if you do have questions, I'm sure you're allowed to have those. However, it's always good to kind of listen and understand what is currently happening and then move on from there. There's been a lot of changes in the market. You've heard of developments that are canceled, and then the questions are, what are the rights of the purchaser, and what is the position of a real estate agent? So the lawyer is here. We'll cover all the legal aspects. You're more than welcome to exchange information afterwards, and then moving forward, if you have any questions, you can always consult. And Stephen can proceed from here.
Thank you.
All right.
Where should I stand? Does it matter?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
Thank you, Celeste.
You're welcome. Thank you, actually.
Okay, so are there viewers outside this
Yes,
room?
there are.
Okay, so for anybody viewing outside the academy, consider yourself punished because you only got a free lunch on me if you came to the academy. Okay, so, but as a consolation, if you hang in there until 2 o'clock, I'm going to give away at 2 o'clock. If you hang in there, 15 no cost freebies for your buyers, home protection plans, warranties, okay, on properties being bought. So we'll talk about that at the end of the seminar.
Thank you. That's great, actually. We haven't had one of those. So.
Okay, so if you are here in this room, you've got one of my lucky pens, okay? And you must open this pen by twisting it. Okay, it's a twist pen. Stylus is on the end for your iPad, iPhone. Don't forget text messaging me. And if you look at my business card, by the way, my name is Steve Shub, and you'll see on my business card we have 7 locations. I have a team of 35 people, very lazy. Okay, we do no criminal law, no family law, no immigration law, no litigation, no corporate commercial. All we do is one thing and one thing only. The whole 35 team, right? And that's residential real estate closings. So you'll see those 7 locations at the back of the card. For 26 years, our main office was at Young and Drury, Young and Cummer. It's now the M2M Condo site, so we got thrown out. We were the second last occupants to get out of the building. And we've split our main office between Hallmark. We have a new office at Hallmark, Young and Shepherd, and just up the street here at Young and Weldrick, our main office. Most of our people are up there at 9555 Young Street. So also, if you look in the back of my card, you'll see my cell. Good to 11 p.m. 7 days. So even if I'm not the lawyer involved in your deal, you simply want a second opinion, I'm not sending little bills for that. The idea is we develop a working relationship. Maybe one day down the road, we might do a deal together. And if you look in the front of my card, you'll see reference to our website, homelegalcost.com. And after 26 years, a couple weeks ago, it finally went mobile friendly. It's no longer that archaic looking thing. Okay, so any prices buying or selling up to 5 million, you can print out all the legal costs in 20 seconds or less. Instant conversion to 18 different languages on the site. And don't forget condo status reviews. Once we do a condo status review, we do a conference called Realtor and Client. So we're on the same page at the same time. When it comes to builder agreement reviews, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is issues on GTA high-rise sale sites. But when it comes to builder agreement reviews, take advantage of the 10-day cooling off period, but we no longer accept hard copies of the builder's agreement. Most sites, the builders are doing DocuSign electronic copies of agreements, and you can just flip it over to my office, email it over. However, it's no longer a freebie. Now, e-transfer, 165 including HST. Once we do the builder's agreement review, we send out a 2-page proposal, builder's lawyer, realtor, and client. So that 165 includes the review and any discussions during the negotiations for any proposed changes. Keep in mind that typically we warn clients that some builders give us nothing, depending on how well the sales are going. Tridel, forget it. Okay, they're never going to give us any changes. So certain different builders have different policies. Now, anybody here raise your hands if you have any deals on the Icona or Cosmos sites. Raise your hands if anybody had any deals there. A couple of hands went up. Okay. So in case you're not familiar with what happened, Cosmos was Liberty Developments, new downtown city of Vaughan, the end of the subway, Jane and 7. In 2016, sold out all 1,100 units very promptly, no problem. So they're all sold out, Liberty Developments, right? And 2 years later, what did they do? They didn't even get mutual releases signed. I mean, whoever heard of a builder returning the deposit monies and not even getting mutual releases signed, okay? They simply said, bye-bye, here's all your deposits back. Now think about it, in 2016, these lucky investors, these lucky buyers, they were rubbing their hands, they were so happy. Great location, end of the subway, property values went up an average of $100,000 per suite. Now figure out the math, right? 1,100 units sold out and increase in value an average of $100,000 a suite. That's 110 million bucks in increased value. Pretty tempting for the builder, huh? Plus next door to Cosmos, the next door developer, City of Vaughan, had given a higher density approval. So not only if the builder grabs all the deals back, can he sell for a higher price, but if he gets a higher density, he can even sell more units. So remember, builder's agreement, pages and pages of fine print. That's not designed to protect the buyer. That's designed to protect the builder. And there's one little condition the builder has in there. That's conditional upon the builder arranging satisfactory construction mortgage financing. Well, in 2016, when the project was sold out 1,100 suites, Liberty Developments could have easily got the mortgage put together before interest rates started to climb a bit, right? However, they held off, intentionally or unintentionally. Now, in contract law, if you go in front of a judge, let's say you have any condition for mortgage financing, a buyer's condition, a builder's condition. If you go in front of a judge and say, listen, this particular individual had a condition of mortgage financing was not in good faith, judge. Because when you have a contract, you're in breach of that contract if you're not in good faith in satisfying that condition. You have to be in good faith, try to satisfy your condition. What did Liberty Developments do to satisfy their mortgage construction financing condition? Zero, because they could have easily gotten the financing. In fact, what did they do? Oh, they turned around and bought Promenade Mall for redevelopment. That's what they did. Okay, what about Icona down the street? This is also the same location. End of the subway, Jane and 7, City of Vaughan downtown, also sold out. And what did they do? The same thing. Okay, so the question is, do they get away with it? Oh, probably. The only lawsuit on the table so far is not an Icona lawsuit. And by the way, Icona was Gupta Group. And what did Gupta Group do? Well, they turned around and bought the northwest corner of Young and Steeles for redevelopment, about 53 million bucks, right? Now, all those buildings you see at Young and Steeles in the northwest corner, Staples and so on, that's all land lease. Those are all land lease deals owned by the same owner. And they sold that site to the Gupta Group for 53 million bucks. You're gonna build 3 or 4 towers, hotel, office, whatever. But in the meantime, all of these poor buyers who had already had increased in values of $100,000 average per suite. And so in the Cosmos project of 1,100 units, only 451 buyers or 451 units hired a lawyer named Ted Charney, not to do a class action lawsuit, but to, because Ted Charney said, well, if we do a class action lawsuit, it's going to take about 3 years. But there's other types of litigation we can do, which will be a little faster. So that's what they're doing. So keep that in mind, that there's pages and pages of fine print, and unfortunately, things like this happen. It hasn't happened too often in the past, but when you're caught with a situation where prices are rising, interest rates start to creep up, and you had 2 developers, Gupta Developments and Liberty Developments, who took advantage of the opportunity, no mutual releases signed, returned all the deposits. Okay? So I want to talk about the fact that when you go into a builder's site and your buyer or you buy a unit for $500,000, is that the price? No, it's like if you walk into a store and you buy an item for $500, you have a fair amount of predictability. One second, you have a fair amount of predictability that when you go up to the cash, you're going to pay $500 plus HST, right? That's quite predictable. But when you buy from the builder for $500,000 and you go up to register your deed, or your lawyer goes up to register the deed, is it predictable? No, it's not predictable. And we're going to talk about that right now. Everybody has a sheet. Turn to this sheet. It looks like this. I'll get up to speed. Everybody has a sheet like this. You can grab it right from there. Now, builder adjustments are not a joke anymore. Like going back several years ago, builder adjustments would range, $3,000 to $6,000. Then they got a little more creative, $6,000 to $9,000. Then it ranged from 9 to 12, then 12 to 15. Now on the new sites, 15 to 20. Okay, and maybe even more, especially if you're an investor. Okay, so let's look at this sheet, because this sheet starts off, and I guess for those of you not in the room, you can maybe see it on the screen. It starts off with a section A, the small builder adjustments. I call them small builder adjustments because there's 8 examples here, but each one of these examples is basically hundreds of dollars, under $1,000. But when you add up all those small examples, they total between $2,000 and $2,500 just for the small adjustments. Then we go into section B. And section B, let's see if I can scroll this down. Section B talks about the bigger adjustments, examples of the bigger adjustments, things that are over $1,000 each. Now, cap, don't be fooled. Okay, what is a cap? It's a joke. That's what it is. Okay, because builders are very tricky when it comes to caps. For example, you can have a situation where a builder says, he's going to cap extra cost to the buyer of $2,500 on existing levies. Existing levies will be capped at $2,500, but then he doesn't cap any increases. And then what is a cap? Is a cap on all builder adjustments? Never. Like buyers think, they sort of lead themselves to believe, there's more materials right here to pick up. But buyers think that, if I have a cap, surely that means all my adjustments are capped at that number. Wrong. Okay, that's not the case. So you have to look at the wording of the cap. You have to understand what is really capped. So let's look at the bigger builder adjustments in this section B on this page that I've handed out to you. The biggest single adjustment is the HST rebate money. Now, remember, and you might want to make a note of this on the back of your page, front of the page. Remember, these pens are twist pens to open them up, okay? Stylus on the end, your iPad, iPhone, okay? If you are a purchaser and you're going to be an owner occupier, it's going to become your primary residence or your immediate family. What is immediate family? Make a note. Immediate family is not aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, or cousins. Let me repeat that. Make a note of it. Immediate family is not aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, or cousins. Okay? So if your immediate family is going to make it their primary residence, then that buyer qualifies to assign the HST rebate money. Now remember, the gross HST is inside the builder's price. What is not inside the builder's price is that HST rebate money. And that HST rebate money is only a partial rebate. It's not a whole rebate. It's not a full rebate. It's a partial rebate. So that HST rebate will range from $22,000 typically on the low to $27,300 on the high, depending on the price from the builder. Make a note of that. It only ranges from $22,000 on the low to $27,300 on the high, no matter what the price is practically. Like once you get above a price of about $300,000. There's nothing under $300,000 anyway, right? So the peak of $27,300 rebates is reached when the price gets to about $370,000. That's the peak. And then as the price continues to increase from $370,000, the HST rebate starts coming down. And once you hit $484,000, the HST rebate comes down to $24,000. And any builder's price after $484,000, it's a flat amount of $24,000. It doesn't matter if you're buying for $600,000 from the builder, $900,000, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. The HST rebate after $484,000 is flat at $24,000. But that's one adjustment. And if you don't qualify as a buyer to simply assign that HST rebate because it's not your primary residence, let's say it's a cousin who's going to be moving in, or a niece or a nephew. If you don't qualify, or you're an investor, then you cannot simply assign that rebate, call it $24,000 on a $500,000 deal, to use a $500,000 price, right? You cannot simply assign that from the government into the builder's pocket. The price of $500,000 quoted by the builder, the price is really $500,000 for the buyer plus $24,000 rebate from the government, which must be assigned over. And if the buyer does not qualify to assign it over, the builder still must receive the $500,000 plus the 24. So the real price is $524. You got it? Any questions about that? Okay, so remember, the gross HST is inside the price. What's not inside the price is the HST rebate money. That's the problem. And you've got to remember that, because in all builder sites, question over here.
Sorry, I didn't get that $5,200. That's the amount that the builder gets paid.
Yeah, but let's pretend, let's assume the builder says this unit is $500,000. Okay, but the builder's going to get $500,000 from the buyer, plus in the fine print it says that the buyer must qualify to assign that HST rebate money, $24,000 over the builder on top of the price. So the builder's really selling for $500,000 plus 24. He's really selling for $524,000. Got it? Okay. So if you're an investor or your cousin's going to occupy it and you don't qualify for immediate family member, then the problem is you're going to have to lay out on final closing, not occupancy closing, final closing, the extra $24,000 HST rebate to the builder on top of the price. And then you have to apply for the refund. How do you qualify to apply for a refund as an investor? You cannot have a month-to-month tenancy. Okay, it must be a 1-year lease. You can't have a short-term rental. It's got to be a 1-year lease. And you have to give a copy of that 1-year lease to the government when you make the application for the refund. As soon as you close with a builder, you can immediately apply for the refund if you have a 1-year lease in place and you set up a 1-year lease during occupancy. And the 1-year lease can be with a niece or nephew or somebody who doesn't qualify. A 1-year lease can be with a family member whose cousin didn't qualify. So now you're like an investor. Nobody cares who the 1-year lease is with. You have to show a copy of that 1-year lease with your application, and it takes about 3 months to process to get the refund back. Are you with me on that? Okay. However, there's a little kicker. CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, will check the title 1 year after final close of the builder to see if that investor still owns the unit. And when they check in the land title system, they find they still don't own the unit, they didn't continue to own it for the full year, then the CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, can go back to that buyer and say, listen, we gave you a refund of the $24,000. However, you failed to continue to qualify, because to continue to qualify to keep the money in your pocket, the refund we gave you, you must continue owning for 1 year. And so you can't sell within that year. Question? Final close, from final closing, okay? Now, if you have a 1 year lease, typically, and you're an investor, you're going to sort of hold on anyway, hopefully, okay? But if the tenant leaves partway during that year, watch out. You might be tempted to sell the unit, and if you sell the unit, you're going to find Revenue Canada coming knocking on your door. And by the way, I'm sure many of you have received, or your clients have received, a phone call calling from CRA. I have a few questions to ask you about this deal that you closed 1.5 years, 2 years ago. How many heard about calls like that? Raise your hands. Come on. I'm sure lots of you. Please take my advice.
Don't take it.
Please take my advice. I'm here. I'm giving you a little bit of advice. Okay. I'm a lawyer. I'm going to give you a little bit of advice. Okay. Free. When you or your client gets a phone call from somebody claiming they're calling from CRA, you say, listen. You say, listen, buddy. You are a voice on the phone. I don't give out personal information to a voice on the phone. You send me a letter to identify who you are, and I'll respond in writing. And then, of course, you go running to, when you get the letter, go running to consult your lawyer before you answer, right? Because you better answer maybe in the best way possible. Because as soon as you answer on the phone and you answer improperly with the wrong information, or the information designed to make them happy at their end, then your goose is cooked, okay? So trouble. Now, that's the first adjustment, the first big adjustment. So if you're not an owner occupier, you've got to deal with that one adjustment, which ranges from $22,000 to $27,000. Remember, the high is $27,300. Okay, and once the price with the builder goes over $484,000, it's a flat $24,000. The reason why that happens is because the HST rebate. Remember, HST consists of two components: a PST component of 8% and a GST component of 5%, total 13%. But each one has its own rebate formula for calculations. And the GST rebate component goes down to zero. It's zero once the price hits $484,000. And the PST rebate formula flattens out at $24,000 after that. That's why it comes down to $24,000 once you hit that peak of about $370,000 price. You get up to $484,000. The rebate flattens at $24,000. And then after that, it doesn't matter what your price is with the builder, $2 million, $5 million, the rebate is still going to be flat $24,000. Got it? Question? There was a question you here before.
Yeah, with those two builders that give the money back, are we going to expect more of that type of stuff coming in the future, or is the government putting in some stuff to protect people?
Well, first of all, the government is not going to do a thing, okay? The government's attitude is consumer protection. We gave all buyers buying condos a consumer protection. What's their consumer protection? 10-day cooling off period. So any buyer has the, as far as the government concerned, consumer protection. They granted the 10-day cooling off period when they sign a deal with the builder. They go running to their lawyer to get the review done during the 10-day cooling off period. And if they don't get their eyes open to issues at that point in time, and remember, when we do builder agreement reviews, our goal as a lawyer is not really to achieve changes, even though it might look that way, okay? Changes with the builder. Our goal is to open our client's eyes and have disclosed to our client potential costs down the road. And I can tell you something, even for example, when Tridel says no changes. The point is we've already opened our client's eyes to what the future might be. Okay, we propose different changes. And later on, the buyer can't point the finger at you, the agent, the realtor, or the lawyer, because when they get shocked 3 or 4 years later on the final close and say, yeah, but we proposed an overall cap. We proposed eliminating, reducing, and capping these items during the builder's cooling off period and during our proposal. And Tridel said, not one change. Take it or leave it. And now I can tell you something. 95% of buyers who come to my office, who have a builder's agreement review done, no matter what the builder does, they go forward because they love that location. They love that location and they love that project or whatever it might be. And they want to own a piece of that project.
The only thing over the objection I have to that is because this is an opportunistic ruling because, you know, I mean.
Okay, hold on.
We can make
Okay,
100.
let me stop you for a second. Remember one thing, okay? The construction industry is a big economic engine, okay? A very big economic engine, all right? So for government to sort of like take up the banner for consumers, they say, listen, we gave you a 10-day cooling off period. You had your opportunity to know what's in the agreement. You can't cry later. The agreement is pages and pages of fine print designed to protect the builder, not the buyer, okay? So when we do a builder's agreement review, our focus is on these adjustments to try to eliminate cap and reduce them. And whether we achieve anything with the builder, some builders give us a bottom line, that's great. And we tell the client, look, we got you a little better bottom line from the builder. And now you make a decision. You either go forward and have an amendment done to incorporate those bottom line changes, or you make a decision not to go forward. But again, 95% of them go forward. Let's look at some of these other adjustments as we go down these typical examples. Item number 2. Item number 2, municipal charges. Now, municipal charges can cover a whack of things. And I mentioned a few of them in here, like sewer impost charges, site plan costs, parkland contribution, public art contribution, Section 37 Planning Act, education levies, development levies, existing levies, increase in levies, like it's really crazy. And just because you have a cap on one of those items doesn't mean all municipal charges are capped. Okay, so I give you a couple of examples under number 2. Last month in January, we did final closings on Dundas Street for grid condos, 181 Dundas Street East, right? And depending on the size of the unit, that one adjustment ranged from $13,500 to $26,000 bucks. Parks levies, remember Emerald Park a couple years ago? The curvaceous buildings down in Young and Shepherd, right? 9 Boker. Parks levies range from just that one adjustment, $5,000 to $7,000, depending on the size of the unit. And get this, in that same building, the Section 37 Planning Act charges range from $14,000 per suite to $37,000. We had a penthouse deal where that one adjustment of the penthouse deal was $37,000, believe it or not. Okay, for what's called Section 37 Planning Act. How does a lawyer check that? Good luck. Okay, no lawyer can typically actually, no one, even an accountant, nobody can sort of figure it out. Go to the city and try to find out how the calculation was done sometimes. Good luck. Like we've managed to tackle builders on some of these adjustments successfully, but it doesn't happen that often, believe me. What about the next one? Development education levies. Again, 181 Dundas Street East, grid condos. An example, that one adjustment ranged from $4,000 to $7,000. Tridell's auberge on the park. We've just done some builder agreement reviews on that, on Leslie Street closing in 2022. In the future, up to $13,000. Now, Tridell is really cool, okay, because always, in all the Tridell deals, the existing levies are always inside the price. When they do a cap on levies, it's on increase in levies, okay? Any increases from the time the offer is accepted to the time the building permit is issued prior to closing, right? So if there's any increase in levies, that's what they're capping. But they're capping on Tridell's auberge in the front up to $13,000 for that one adjustment. So if you add that one adjustment cap to certain other things, yep.
So if I make one question on the HST.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk to the HST.
So the builder, when they sell the new unit, says HST included in the purchase price.
Yeah, remember, the gross HST is inside the price. So if it's a $500,000 price, the gross HST is inside the price. What's not inside the price is the HST rebate money. What's your question?
Right. And then on the closing date, if the builder suspects that you're an investor, you can still slap additional HST on the closing
The
date.
HST rebate money.
HST rebate.
Right.
What's the cap? Is there any cap on that?
Yeah, I just told you. The HST rebate ranges from 22,000 to 27,300 on the high.
I had an instance that builders have 30,000.
Impossible, okay? 500% impossible. There's no such thing. What you're confusing is, it can't be HST rebate money 30,000, impossible, okay? It might have been a combination of things, because sometimes it could have been that plus maybe some levies, cap or whatever, but it wouldn't be just HST rebate, sorry. Okay, so what about this, get this, number 4, this utility connection metering? Well, grid condos, which we just closed, final closings last month in January at Dundas Street East, they range from $1,200 to $2,000 per suite. Now, Tridell's cap on meters, they were like $1,800. Then they were like $2,300. Then they were like $2,800. Now, Auberge on the Park on Leslie Street, can you believe it? I was shocked. They're capping meters at $5,300. So if you take that cap, plus the cap on that site on increase in levies of 13 grand, well, we know, because there's other adjustments, carry on warranty enrollment fee, and all kinds of other smaller things. So now we know for sure down the road, those adjustments alone, even forgetting with the HST rebate money, if you're an investor, those adjustments alone are like 20 grand for sure. And then if you're an investor, and if you add another 24,000, some of your adjustments are in the $45,000 range. Okay, so like it's like, whoa, okay, and then what if you're a foreign investor paying 15% foreign national tax, okay? And of course, suddenly you realize, oh, I got to pay 2 land transfer taxes if you're roadside as well, right? So it can be kind of a shocker. And since April of 17, when the foreign national tax kicked in, by the way, it seems like my foreign investor buyer clients are a little more savvy. They say to me, okay, Mr. Shub, we know that we have to pay the 15% tax. What we want to know is how quickly we can get the refund. Which member of the family should be the buyer so that we can get the quickest refund? And don't forget, when they get the refund, they get interest as well on top of the 15%. Question?
Person closest to getting their citizenship?
Not necessarily, okay? Because sometimes as members of the family graduating from university or they have a job, because don't forget, there's different time periods, like 12 months legally working after the closing date, you can get, even if you're not a permanent resident of Canada, you're not a Canadian citizen, you can get the refund plus interest, okay? 24 months if you're in school, okay? And so on and so forth. So there's different little rules about the refund. So we have to look at, okay, let's only have one family member own the deal, okay? And let's make sure that one family member that's gonna own the deal is the one who can get the refund quickest. Because if you put 2 family members on, they both have to qualify. All right, and then we look at the last adjustment, realty taxes to the end of the year. Well, we just did some deals on, I forget which project it was. It just final, you know, I guess it was that Dundas deal on grid condos where we closed in January. There's 11 months left in the year, and the builder is taking estimated property taxes up to the end of the year. Well, that ranges, so that one adjustment ranges from $3,000 to $5,000. It's prepaid tax for the buyer, but it's still cash out of his pocket. And if you add all those big adjustments to the small adjustments, it is not a joke. Any questions about adjustments? Okay. So,
Kindly clarify what immediate family is. Is it also grandparents?
yeah, immediate family members can include grandparents, parents, spouses, even ex-spouses, believe it or not, okay? Children, grandchildren, but it does not include cousins, nieces, nephews, aunts, or uncles. Remember that. Okay, so it can include parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers, okay, grandchildren, children, of course, okay, you know, that sort of thing. And even spouse and ex-spouse, yeah, question.
So these adjustments are primarily for people who are either investors or who buy them in a site, right? So what if you buy?
No, hold on a second. Those adjustments are for every buyer. The only one adjustment that's not for every buyer is that first one, which is the big one, the HST rebate money. So you don't have to worry about that if you are a buyer who's an owner occupier, or some immediate family member will be the primary, it'll be your primary residence. Then you don't have to worry about this one, because that one, it can just be assigned over to the builder's pocket. You sign a piece of paper, I qualify, I'm assigning this from the government to the builder's pocket, so you don't get hit with that one, right? But the others affect everybody. And I have news for you. Listen to this. The builder says during occupancy, you can flip or assign the deal.
Yeah.
Now, the first problem is that we go back a couple of years ago, about 2 years ago, that was more doable than it is today. Why is that? Why is it less doable today to assign and flip the deals? Forget about mortgages. I'm not talking about mortgages, okay? Here's what happened. Up to about 2 years ago, CRA, Canada Review Agency, was saying, okay, if you assign the deal, if you flip the deal to a buyer number 2, and that buyer number 2 is moving in, first occupant moving in, then no problem, we'll let him assign the HST rebate money from the government into the builder's pocket. So it was more doable because we could do that. But starting about 1.5 years to 2 years ago, CRA said to all the builders and all the builders' lawyers, no more. They said, from now on, we're treating buyer number 2, the assignee, who steps into the shoes of the original buyer buying from the builder. Remember, that original buyer buying from the builder assigned the deal. So he's an investor. So since the original buyer buying from the builder is an investor, and since buyer number 2 is stepping into his shoes, even though he might be moving in, we don't care. So now buyer number 2, the assignee, even if he qualifies to moving in, because he comes in under the umbrella of the original buyer from the builder, who was an investor, who signed the deal, now, problem. Because even if buyer number 2 is moving in as some immediate family member, the government says, we don't care. You're paying the HST rebate on top of the price to the builder when you go to the final closing. And if you qualify, because you are a immediate family member moved in, there's no 1 year period, there's no this, there's no that. You can apply for the refund. You got to lay out the money in the meantime. It takes 3 months from the time you apply to get it back. And instead of form GST, it's called GST 524, you have to use GST 190. So if you're an owner occupier, now they're going to force you to sort of lay out the money, but give me a break. Most assignees who are buyer number 2s, if they see a price of, let's say, $600,000, and they've got the cash down for the $600,000 price, they don't have a whack of extra money on the side. Typically, some do, great, but a lot of people don't, because they're looking at that $600,000 assignment price as like a resale price. They think of it like a resale price. What they don't understand is they're going to step into the shoes of the original buyer number 1. CRA will not allow them to assign the GST rebate money of, let's say, $24,000. So now they got to lay out that $24,000 cash, not another mortgage, cash, okay, on top of the price. You're going to lay out all these other adjustments if they had no cap. And suddenly, their down payment, which was designed for a price of $600,000 on the assignment resale, is not enough. They need a lot more money. So when we're doing an assignment now, I'm suggesting to you, anytime you're doing an assignment, it should be conditional upon lawyer's review, right? Like pass the burden of responsibility.
You think all lawyers are aware of this, Steven?
What's that?
Everybody, all lawyers are aware of it? Most
That's
lawyers.
not my problem, okay? That's not my problem. I don't care about other lawyers, okay? But all I can tell you is one thing. Who is your potential enemy? Who is my potential enemy? Our clients. Our clients, because when you're huggy, kissy, lovey-dovey with your clients and everything's going great, it's a happy family. When things go wrong, who are they going to point the finger at? The lawyer and the realtor involved in the deal. So therefore, you always have to protect yourself against the potential enemy, your client. And the way you do that is to paper your trail. And the way to do that, if you're doing a commercial real estate deal, more complicated deal, a flip deal, an assignment deal, shouldn't you make the deal conditional upon lawyer's review? So if the lawyer, just an ordinary, typical builder deal, don't worry about it. That's his attitude, okay? Or if the lawyer misses something or overlooks something, you've passed the burden of responsibility onto his shoulders, and you're free, you're home free with your client. You said, listen, I did my job as a realtor. I made the deal conditional upon your lawyer's review because it was more complicated. It was a commercial deal. It was an assignment deal. I protected you. And you did, 100%. You can't be faulted, right? The lawyer then becomes the fall guy, and it's his problem if he doesn't do a proper job. Question? Okay.
No, I just listen.
Okay. So think about that. Pass the burden of responsibility. Now, let me tell you about something else. You know, you want to go to a good magic show? I tell people normally, go to Las Vegas. You get a sleight of hand. Now you see it, now you don't. Vegas, I love it. Has the greatest magic shows in the world. In Toronto, you want to go to a great magic show? You go to the builder's sales office. Okay? So you walk into the sales office, they give you the floor plans, room sizes, square footage, they're all there. You expect that, okay? Then your client signs the offer to purchase. There's a schedule attached. Where'd my room sizes and floor plan? Where did my square footage go? Where did my room size go? It's a joke because Tridel, for example, and I had a talk with the big guys over there, and it's like, you guys are a joke, okay? Because going back several years ago, Tridel always in their floor plans and their schedules used to have square footage and room sizes. And their main competitors, all the bratty Italian builders, they didn't. And in the same year, about 4 years ago, they switched. Suddenly, Tridel, when you have signed a deal, the floor plan schedule, it disappears. And the competitor, they went the other opposite direction. They started putting it in all their floor plan schedules. It was a joke. In the same year, they switched, competing with each other. Okay? So, but I have news for you. Of course, as a lawyer, we try to get the floor plan to show the room size and square footages. Okay? But Tridel will not budge now on their position. Okay? And Terrion says, we don't care. Terrion says, if you walk into a builder's site and the builder gives you a floor plan showing room size and square footages, even if that disappears like magic, now you see it, now you don't, when you sign the offer to purchase, Terrion says, doesn't matter. Once they represent what they're going to give you, room size and square footages, it's a maximum 2% variation. What about this? Every builder in the fine print says that the buyer must sign a 10-year rental contract for an HVAC or hot water tank on rental, whatever it might be, if the builder decides to throw them a rental item. That's what it says. Every builder's agreement. Some builders do, some builders don't. So think about this. Let's say the builder's building 350 suites. Let's say every suite has an HVAC. What is HVAC? Heating, ventilation, air conditioning unit, right? A combo unit for heating and air conditioning, right? And let's pretend or assume that each one of these units is worth $1,000. Now, if the builder can not include that HVAC in the price, because now the buyer on closing with the builders agreed to sign a 10-year rental contract at $65 a month plus HST for 10 years. That means the builder doesn't have to lay out $350,000 for the 350 units for the HVACs. He's going to sell the unit for the same price. Market value is market value, okay? And then what happens is that we have a situation where the purchaser buys the unit, there's an HVAC on rental, there's a couple of chairs still around. But anyway, so the HVAC's on rental, right? A lot of these investors forget. A lot of them forget when they go to resell down the road, a couple of years down the road, that they've got this HVAC on rental. So now what happens is the unit's for sale, there's an HVAC on rental, and remember, $65 a month plus HST times 12 months in the year is like $808 a year. Times 10 years, at least 10 years, I think $9 grand. $9 grand for a unit worth $1,000. Okay. But by the way, who do you think owns the company that has the rental? Of course, the builder. Okay, of course, right? And so then what happens is you're selling the unit. It's a couple years old, and the buyer submits an offer through his realtor to buy the unit on a resale basis. And of course, unfortunately for you, what happens is it says, oh, hot water tank on rental, if assumable. Isn't that the standard routine? This is not a hot water tank on rental. This is an HVAC unit at $65 a month plus HST for another 8 years left to go. And so if you're a listing agent and your seller accepts this type of deal without changing it, then the buyer's lawyer, when he searches the title, is going to find the fact that this thing is on rental, this HVAC, and he's going to say to the seller's lawyer, listen, my client never agreed to assume the HVAC on rental. And therefore the seller must pay off the 8 years left to go on the rental. And the seller's not going to be a happy camper. So my recommendation to you, make a note. Grab your pens and make a note. Anytime you're taking a listing, I don't care if you're taking a listing on a detached, a semi, a freehold townhouse, or a high-rise condo apartment. Always ask your seller at the time of taking the listing, is there any item on rental? And let him confirm to you by email, or if he confirms to you by phone, you confirm back to him by email. I confirm there's no rental item in the units about to be sold. So later on down the road, when he's caught by surprise because, oh, he's such a busy guy, he's got so many investments, he forgot all about the rental, okay? And now he's got to pay off the 8 years left to go and the rental, and he tries to point the finger at you. You say, but hold on a second. I papered my trail with my potential enemy, right? Remember, potential enemy is your client. Because when things go wrong, who are they going to point the finger at? Right? So you paper, you say, look, here's the email I sent to you. And you confirm there's no rental item. Bingo. What about this? Every builder in the fine print says the buyer can be required to prove to the builder that he qualifies and still qualifies for the mortgage. Now, of course, 3 or 4 years ago when the offer was signed, the purchaser may be qualified at that point. Since then, interest rates could have gone up, stress tests could have kicked in. Maybe the buyer got excited, he bought too many units. Okay? It used to be that when we go to occupancy closing, some builders would say, now, before we allow the buyer to close at the time of occupancy, we want him to establish that he still has some kind of commitment, at least a written pre-approval by an A lender. Because if we allow him to close an occupancy and give him the key, he throws a tenant in there, then the builder's not going to be a happy camper if down the road that buyer can't close and he's got tenants sitting there, right? So, and remember, typically, and going back to this tenancy idea, if the builder dangles a carrot and says, during occupancy, you can rent out the unit, read what it says. Read what the schedule says. Some of the builders say you can rent out the unit, but only on a month-to-month basis. If you're an investor and you have to pay the HST rebate money to the top of the price, in order to qualify to apply for the refund of that HST rebate money, you need a 1-year lease. You need to submit a copy of a 1-year lease, not a month-to-month tenancy, not a short-term rental. So if the builder says, oh, you can rent out during occupancy, but only on a monthly basis, then as a lawyer, we try to change that. We point out to the client, look, that's a bit of an issue. Worst case scenario, if the builder won't budge on the monthly tenancy, we tell the client, listen, do a 1-year lease and give it a 60-day notice provision at any point in time. So it's in effect like a monthly tenancy, but it's still a 1-year lease. So you can throw it at the government's face when you apply for the refund as an investor, because you need a 1-year lease to qualify to get that refund of the HST rebate money. What about this? The builder says, I'm going to give you 12 months common expenses credit on closing, or I'm going to give you $5,000 credit on closing. Now, as a lawyer, I get to sign up my clients. The client says to me, Mr. Shub, I was supposed to get a credit. Where's my credit? There it is. It's right here. Credit's right here. You got it. Realize something. That when the builder offers a carrot, an incentive to buy, okay, you're going to have this credit. That's a marketing tool. So on one hand, he gives you the credit. On the other hand, he's going to have something else built into the fine print where he's going to take it away and offset that credit with increase in levies, no cap, or other things, whether parks levies, development charges. He's going to structure his adjustments like we talked about over here earlier. He's going to structure those adjustments to easily offset that credit. So when the buyer says, well, Mr. Shub, where's the benefit? I thought I was going to get a benefit from this credit. You got it, but you're not going to feel the benefit. You can't, because the deal you signed was set up in such a way that you got to pay all these other adjustments, which basically wipe out your credit.
So then I can see it.
It's a marketing tool. That's what it is, okay? So understand that, but that's not my problem, okay? Because if I did a builder's agreement review for a client, again, the objective is to try to eliminate and reduce those adjustments and to disclose to the client what they're all about and where we're going. So when the builder like Tridel says we're not allowing one change, that's cool. Because again, later on down the road, my client can't point the finger at me or you. It was disclosed to him. What about, let's say this afternoon, somebody comes to you and says, I want you to help me buy a deal at M2M Condos. My old main office, okay? Now it's like, every time I drive by 5799 Youngster, I see this little claw, you know, like taking down the building where I sat for 26 years, okay? And so what can I tell you? M2M Condos, like, now, you realize to the seminar, wait a second, this client wants me to help him buy at M2M Condos. And I remember that seminar with Mr. Shub, and he talked about this minefield of issues on builder sites, okay? So what are you gonna do? You're gonna take him to the site and sell him the unit. That's your job, you're a salesperson. You're gonna take the buyer to the builder site and sell them the unit, but you're gonna do one other thing. And what might that be?
Conditional lawyer's approval.
Remind the buyer that there's a 10-day cooling off period. Every day counts, Saturdays, Sundays, holidays, every day counts. The clock is ticking. And remember that in my office, we no longer take hard copies of builders' agreements. It must be electronic copy now, as of a couple weeks ago. Remember, builders are producing DocuSign deals, electronic copies of agreements. They're not giving hard copies anymore to buyers typically. So you have to flip over to us an electronic copy, and it's no longer a freebie in my office. We now require an e-transfer, $165 including HST, and we do in a couple of days the builder's agreement review, a two-page proposal, submit it to the builder, builder's lawyer. You get a copy if you're a realtor involved in the deal, and client gets a copy. And that 165, including HST, covers the review plus any discussions or negotiations during that review. It is not applied to the ultimate fees. However, if you're a good client, guys, if you're a good client, and a repeat client, maybe you won't charge 165. Okay? So remember that. Now, I promised you that you're being punished if you're not in this room. Okay, if you're in a branch office viewing this, you were punished because you didn't get the free lunch on me. However, now I'm going to offer you a concession. Okay? And you might have to make a note about this because I've never done this before. And I'm just designing it this morning. Okay? I don't know if any of you have heard that First Canadian Title has a home protection warranty. Does somebody know about that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to offer 15 buyers from this group a free, no charge, First Canadian Title home buyer's warranty. But it is, make a note, it's not for condo apartments. It is not for condo apartments. It's also not going to be if it's on, if it's not on city services, if it's on septic or well, I'm not offering it. It's got to be on city services. It's got to be a purchase, of course. It's got to be a non-condo. And you've got to remember a couple things about it. You can have, it covers 18 months after closing, up to $20,000, but it's not one claim. You can have 5 claims. Okay? As long as the claims for the furnace, the air conditioner, the roof, the foundation do not exceed a total of $20,000 over the year and a half, you're good. Okay? Now think about it. When you are showing a buyer a deal today, can you check out the air conditioning in the winter? Not too well, right? So if that air conditioning come the spring doesn't work, and that's within the year and a half, and you couldn't check it out, then you're covered. However, if it's a claim for furnace or air conditioning, the claim must exceed $500. Okay, the total repair cost must be over $500, not over $20,000. And what are some of the other features? If you're doing, for example, a furnace repair problem or an air conditioning problem, the unit must be less, the unit itself, the component itself that you're covering must be under 15 years of age. Okay? Those things like, and by the way, there must be also a home inspection report done by a certified home inspector. So even if you're doing a townhouse deal, you're doing a detached, semi, whatever it is, to qualify to get the money covering the repair problem, you must have done a home inspections report. Certified home inspector, it can't be like a 2-page checklist. Okay, the deal killer does a 2-page checklist, that won't work. Okay, you know who
The
he is.
client doesn't want to have a home inspection?
No, it won't work. Yeah, in order to qualify, it can't be a condo apartment, number one, and number two, it's got to be a home inspection situation where you get a certified home inspector. Okay, so the way I'm going to work this deal, you might want to make a note of this. By the end of the day today,
Excuse
the
me.
first, yeah, question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, there is a company has offer a home inspection with
Amerispec or whatever.
pardon me?
Is it Amerispec?
No, TFC. They have inspection. They sent inspector
Yeah.
for the house. They gave $20,000 warranty for any damages happened during 1 year after.
Yeah, the one I'm talking about is 18 months, a year and a half. Okay, anyway, let me just finish. Okay, so make a note. If by the end of the day today, like you can email me to my personal email, the first 15 people who email to me, okay? My personal email is Stephen Shub, one word, at homelegalcost.com. And the subject of the email must be FCT, that's first name Taylor, FCT, home protection warranty. That must be the subject matter on your email. And you tell me I'm going to give you 30 days, okay, to hit me with a firm offer to purchase. If within 30 days you give me a firm offer to purchase in my office, or we're acting for the buyer, and you've reserved that warranty as a freebie for your client, and you do it by the end of the day today, the first 15 people who send me such an email, I'll confirm back to you that you're on reserve, your 30-day clock is ticking. If you get us a firm deal coming to our house, we're acting for the purchaser, there was a home inspector's report, it was a non-condo, then there's no charge to your client. Now, what is it worth? It's worth $350 plus HST. Okay, so might be a nice little thing for some of your clients. And question back here?
Why non-condo?
Because
I
condo,
don't mean
it's,
my wife's condo, but I mean
yeah,
townhouse condo.
a townhouse is okay, but a condo apartment is what's not covered, because condo apartment, like furnace, air conditioning, roof, foundation, you know, it's already covered typically in so many other ways. So condo apartment is not practical to cover. But condo townhouse, yes. Freehold townhouse, yes. Semis, detached, yes.
But can you still purchase this even though you're not moving out? Or if people are not moving out, you still purchase this protection?
Well, the one I'm talking about is only, like my situation that I'm talking about is only for a home buyer. Okay, so I'm offering, if you send me a deal, if you first I'll put it on reserve by the end of the day today, then you've got a 30-day window to send us a firm deal, and it'll be on reserve waiting for a client. They get a home buyer's protection up to $20,000, up to 18 months, covering furnace, air conditioning, roof, and the foundation. Okay, so keep in mind. Also, let's say, let's say Sunday night. We get to Sunday night. This coming Sunday, it's 10:30 at night. You have a problem. Your broker, your manager is already asleep. Don't be afraid. Look at my business card. My cell is good to 11 p.m. 7 days. I'm sure some of you can testify that you've tested me and tried me, and you've discovered that, yes, it's true. He will answer his phone. And you know, when clients call me on the weekend, and by the way, I'm not saying no bills for that. The idea is we develop a working relationship. Maybe one day down the road, we do a deal together. And when clients call me, evenings and weekends, they say, oh, I saw your information. I have a problem. This happens every weekend, trust me. And they say, can I come and meet you and consult you about a problem I have? This is the question, typically. You know what I say? Tell me your problem. Like, tell me right now what the problem is. And typically within 5-10 minutes, we've resolved the problem. I gave them my opinion. They don't have to come for a meeting. I don't have to have a meeting. They didn't get charged a fee. Will they ever forget me? I don't think so. What crazy lawyer did that on a Sunday or a Saturday or whatever, okay? So believe me, we're there to serve. I got a team of 35 people. All we do is residential real estate. Are there any questions whatsoever about anything to do with residential real estate? Any questions at all?
I have a question.
Yeah, question?
Because I do mostly pre-construction.
Mostly pre-construction, okay.
And you know, the builders agreements don't have the conditional upon finance and the lawyer that have the 10 days. But for a builder does not give me conditional upon financing, conditional upon lawyer, how can I protect myself?
Okay, so the question is, in case you can't hear it, is that this lady does mostly pre-construction deals, and how does she protect buyers and so on in situations? Well, first of all, if there's a condo component, remember, if you're buying from the builder and it's a freehold townhouse, but it has a common element condo component, you still have your 10-day cooling off period. You know that, right? Anytime you're buying from the builder and it has a condo element component, you still get your 10-day cooling off period. But let's pretend you're buying from the builder, or your client is, and there is no condo component. So there's no 10-day cooling off period, right? So now it's up to you as the buyer's realtor to encourage the buyer to submit an offer or ask for a schedule, which is conditional upon lawyer's review. And it depends on the site. It depends on how well the sales are going. Some builders will give it, some builders will not give it. Any other questions? Yeah. Any other questions about residential real estate? Anything at all? Okay. Yep, one over here.
Just a quick review on the first buyer and second buyer.
The assignment.
Yeah, yeah. What happens to the second one?
Well, the problem is up until a couple of years ago, CRA, Canada Revenue Agency, was allowing buyer number 2 on an assignment. If he was going to become an owner occupier, they were allowing him to have the HST rebate assigned, this HST rebate we talked about up in here, right, which ranges from 20 to 27,000. They were allowing them to simply assign it over the builder, and he felt nothing, that buyer number 2. But about 2 years ago, CRA came down to all the builders and builders lawyers said, no more. They said, now, even if buyer number 2, the assignee, is moving in, we don't care. Because if he's going to step into the shoes of the original buyer from the builder, and that original buyer from the builder was an investor because he flipped or assigned the deal, so they're going to treat him, buyer number 2, who's stepping into the shoes of the first buyer, like he's an investor, even if he's not. Even if he's moving in, we're going to treat him the same way. He can't be in a better position than the first buyer he took an assignment from. And so now they're charging that buyer number 2 this HST rebate money. And so now, unfortunately, it makes it less marketable to do your flips or assignments. So even when the builder says, oh, you can assign the deal during occupancy or whatever, it's not as easy to do it anymore because now the lawyer must point out to buyer number 2, hey, you have to have this extra money on top of your down payment to cover this range of $20,000 to $27,000 for HST rebate. That's the problem. Do you understand?
Steven?
Yeah.
What happens, what other responsibilities for the first buyer besides the capital gain?
Okay, that's a good question. On an assignment, what are the responsibility of the first buyer? Now remember, when you do a TREB form of assignment and you get to the HST include or not included in the price, and that's the TREB assignment agreement. The HST they're talking about is the HST on the assignment deal, not the HST on the builder deal, right? There's potentially HST on the assignment deal. And I always warn a seller, a flip seller, it's always gonna have to be HST included or no buyer number 2 will buy the deal, okay? So what are the possible consequences for the flip seller? The possible consequences are, and remember I talked to you earlier that maybe a year and a half later, 2 years later, you might get a phone call from somebody claiming they're calling from CRA, and you always say to the caller, listen, if you're a stranger on the phone, your voice on the phone, I don't give about personal information, your voice on the phone. Send me a letter to identify who you are, and I'll send you a letter in response, right? That's how you deal with that type of call. Because they're gonna call. The builder's gonna feed them all the information, okay? Now, for buyer number 1, who's assigned the deal, there is potential HST on the flip sale, but not on the whole flip sale price. And the question CRA wants to have answered by buyer number one, who signed the deal 4 years ago with the builder, is at the time they signed the offer to buy from the builder 4 years ago, what was the primary intention? Maybe you know, what was the primary intention? It's right on my website, all this information. Okay. What was the primary intention buying from the builder? If the primary intention by the original buyer buying from the builder was to buy for his immediate family member, however, over a couple of years, his circumstances changed. Like he bought for his son, who he thought he was going to go to U of T downtown. Then the son, he's going to Windsor University or Guelph or wherever, right? So now he might as well flip and assign the deal because the purpose of the purchase was to buy for the son, who he was hoping to go to U of T downtown. So he intended to buy for a immediate family member. Circumstances change, and he can document that with an affidavit through the lawyer. Then there's no HST on the flip side. Or maybe he bought for his mother coming from overseas. His mother's coming from overseas, mother's going to live there, okay? But by the time she got to Canada, she could no longer live independently, and her circumstances changed. So now she has to be in a retirement home with support. She can't live in that condo. So now he does the flip sale, assigns it, right? Revenue Canada says, as long as you can show me and satisfy me, Revenue Canada, that the primary intention of buying from the builder 4 years ago when you signed the offer was for immediate family member and circumstances changed, there's no HST in the flip sale. But if you're an investor, you bought 2-3 units of the project, and I've argued with Revenue Canada. No, there's two children. He bought 2 units. They had 2 kids. Okay, and look at their age, and look at where they went to university, and so we argued, actually successfully won case. Because normally if a person bought a couple of units in the same project, for sure, they're investors. You're not gonna pull the wool over CRA's eyes, right? So the minute CRA concludes that no, this was primary intention, or a substantial part of the intention was an investment down the road, and they assigned the deal down the road, then let's pretend the builder price was 500,000. Make a note. Let's pretend the builder price was 500 grand, and he flipped the deal for 600, and he gave the builder 100,000 deposits. Okay, he gave the builder $100,000 deposits, bought the builder for 500, now sold for 600. So the difference in price is 100, right? And the return of deposit money is another 100. So what CRA says is if the flip seller has to pay HST on the flip sale, it's not on the $600,000. No, it's on the 13% HST will be on 2 items. The return of deposit monies of 100,000, which you paid the builder, and the price differential, the other 100,000. So 13% on $200,000. Okay, which is what? $26,000, right?
Sorry, no.
So
You said that there was the deposit to the builder and number 2.
yeah. So remember though, like there's 2. When HST is discussed on a flip deal, on assignment deal, you have HST on the builder deal. That's a different story. That's the HST rebate money is 20 to 27,000. That's a different issue, right? And then you have the other issue for the flip seller, not for a flip buyer. It doesn't affect the flip buyer as long as in the OREA assignment agreement form, it said HST included in the flip sale agreement. Then the flip buyer is not affected. Okay, it can only affect the flip seller, and we have a gentleman over there who knows all about that little problem. We talked about that recently. Okay, so what can I tell you? Any other questions about that?
So you're suggesting we shouldn't use OREA form?
Oh, you have to use a REA form.
And if HST is not.
The minute you don't use an REA form, it's a problem, okay? Because it's not familiar to the lawyers, to the realtors, and some of these lawyers have customized forms and listen, you know, you're a lot better off using a REA form, the TREV form, right? Any other questions about that?
So just to clarify on your explanation, if I understand it correctly, so the seller, the assigner has to pay the 24,000 anyways on the HST because he's an investor, and the
No, but hold on.
6,000.
No. When you talk about the HST rebate, remember that issue only kicks in when buyer number 2 is doing the final closing of the building. That only kicks in at that point, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when buyer number 2 comes along to close with the builder, that's when buyer number 2, the assignee, will have to pay the HST rebate money, even if he's moving in. CRA says we don't care anymore. Okay, that's when it becomes an issue. Then that buyer number 2, assuming he's going to move in or some immediate family member will move in, can apply for a full refund and use the form 190. It's called GST 190 form. because it is, and you just have to live there for any period of time. Like, no, there's no minimum time period to live there. Whereas if you're an investor, you have to continue owning for 1 year. But if you're an owner occupier, there's no minimum time period to live there, so long as you can document the fact that you've moved in, because you can move into a unit as an owner occupier. It's my primary residence, let's say, my immediate family member, and find I don't like the smells down the hall. I don't like, it's no longer really convenient for where I work. There's not enough room to hang my clothes. So as long as you can document, and sometimes CRA says, you show me your MasterCard bill, your Visa bill, what was the address on those bills? Show me your bank statement, where's the address on that? Show me your driver's license, show me all this stuff, right? Because they're suspicious of stories. So the more evidence you have, you can just reserve the elevator, you actually at least move some stuff into a bedroom. Okay, that's what I tell my clients. Any question over here?
Yeah, I have a question. Regarding the pre-construction, somebody buy it for their own principal house, and then down the road they change, they want to think it as an investment. So if it become an investment on the closing, you have to pay the HST rebate, I guess.
Yeah, as soon as and remember, builders have a discretion. Okay, it says that right in the agreement in the fine print. They have a discretion, and even if you're legitimately moving in, but they have a belief that you weren't the first occupant, maybe you had a short-term rental during the occupancy, and therefore you don't qualify. And even if you change your mind, good luck. Okay, the builders can still say, we don't care what you say, we don't care what you put on paper. We're still going to charge the HST rebate money, and then if you do qualify, if you really do qualify, then you apply for the refund. And that's the attitude of the builders. We fought many, many times with many builders and builders lawyers over that. Sometimes we win, sometimes we don't.
So why is there a HST on the deposit of your own money?
Say again.
Right, there is $100,000 deposit that you return when you're getting your money back from the buyer to.
Oh, you mean like calculating the HST for the flip seller, right? Well, that's a good question. Like, because basically Revenue Canada says, listen, getting your deposit back from the builder of $100,000, getting that refunded to you as a flip seller, plus getting the price differential, which is $200,000 in that example I gave you, the prices could go down. You could lose the whole thing. Okay, I mean, so they're saying that you get that $200,000, that's like what you're selling for. You're getting back your deposits plus the price differential, the gross profit money, and that's their decision. Not my decision, their decision. Yeah. That's how they're going to calculate the HST. This question.
How is the property?
Regarding to the lease agreement, if you're going to lease that property for a year, term of year, you could start from the closing date or after that, or start even from the.
Yeah, very often these leases, the 1 year lease, Revenue Canada doesn't care. When you apply for the refund, they don't care. Remember, that lease could be, that 1 year lease could be with a cousin, niece, nephew, doesn't matter. Okay, and that lease can start during occupancy. Doesn't matter. They just want to see when you apply that you have a 1 year lease. Okay. Question over here.
Assuming you qualify for rebate, is there a deadline to apply for it?
Yeah. So the question is, in case you didn't hear it, is there a deadline to qualify and apply for the rebate? I believe it's 18 months. Okay, so you have enough time from final closing, 18 months, to get your 1 year tenant in there and so on and so forth. Another question back here?
When you assign it to the family member, it's not, again, it's not to be considered as a, like, buyer.
Yeah, as soon as you assign to anybody, that's why, like, it's better if we could do an amendment with the builder. If the builder allows us to do an amendment, and sometimes we now argue with the builders, look, let's just put in a clause that even though we're doing this amendment, you're not releasing buyer number one or whatever. And sometimes they charge a fee and sometimes they agree with it, because as soon as you do an assignment, it could be a problem. But there was another question back here.
Yes, so you said that if the second buyer stepped into the shoes of the first buyer, right? But the offer was done in a RIA form, and it says HST included in, so why would he still be responsible for what the first buyer signed up for?
Well, because they're saying that buyer number two, the assignee, can't be in any better position than the guy he took the assignment from. And the guy he took the assignment from was an investor because he assigned the deal. So the minute buyer number one, the original buyer for the builder, was an investor, then he's caught with paying the HST rebate on top of the price. So they're saying, well, we're no longer going to treat buyer number two, even if it is going to become his primary residence. We don't care. And that was their decision. And now that's the way it works. And so that's why.
Cover them by having HST included in. It does not cover them.
No, because again, the HST rebate issue up here is only when you get to the final closing, right? So now on the assignment deals, some flip sellers' lawyers are putting in a clause that the buyer understands, the buyer number two understands, he's going to have to lay out the HST rebate on top of the price and apply to get the money back. The problem becomes, does buyer number two really have the extra cash budget on top of his cash down to cover that, plus maybe all these other builder adjustments? Okay, if there's any other questions, I passed my time. So if there's any other questions, I'm good to 11 p.m. 7 days. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Yeah, sometimes a year.
Yeah, could start
Yeah, anytime you know.
I bought a 7 years ago. Right now, it's condition. But
yeah, the problem will be when you qualify. Have you talked to the lawyer? You haven't ever talked to the lawyer. Original buyer, the original buyer.
But he signed up, he has signed up. Do I have to pay again?
Yeah, any assignments, the problem is you might end up having to pay the top. Even a relative doesn't matter. Okay, so it's a lot better to do what's called an amendment. If you do an amendment, then it's not a problem. Yeah. For the original buyer from the building.
Yeah, you have to pay. But for the buyer, and that one on closing date.
Buyer number two.
Number two, have to pay.
Yeah, it's
And
crazy.
then,
Even though he's moving in.
Yeah, if I'm the second buyer, I move in for myself. I pay the
Yes.
and I pay back.
Yes, 419. Yes. Yes, but the problem is, in the meantime, you gotta take the money out of your pocket,
Yeah, yeah.
and it takes 3 months to get the money back. So some people don't have the cash budget.
So that's the problem.
That's the problem. If they have the cash budget, they just wait 3 months to get the money back. That's okay. But they have to apply for the refund. Before
If
when-
you're representing the number one buyer.
Yeah.
For to put GSTs excluded.
And you can't do your assignment. Like no buyer number two is going to do that deal.
So you are stuck with the customer.
But what you have to do is fine tune your story. When the revenue can't goes down the road and say, hey, send me a letter. And then you got to prepare your situation with your lawyer.
You're gonna ask that question.
Yes, and about the amendment is the first buyer and the second buyer, they don't have assignment agreement.
They will have an
Just
assignment.
make amendment.
But you see, in some cases, you can't do an amendment. Okay? If you have an assignment, the builder's going to consent to the assignment. He's not going to allow an amendment. It's not gonna happen. We never do. Like, we never estimate. No. We never estimate what the adjustment might be. We try to tackle reduction, elimination, capping. That's what we focus on. Right? The odd client might say, tell them, right? And the odd client might say, okay, I'll tell you. Don't tell them. Let the lawyer deal with it. So speak to your lawyer. But don't, because otherwise you get blamed if you guess wrong. Let the lawyer guess wrong.
You're right.
Blame it on you. Alon, how are you doing? You good boy?
Thank you.
Okay, you guys came late, so you missed all the good stuff.
This is a friend of ours for 30 years.
Right.
Ether, now into the office.
And the best thing to do is to call them. Now is not a good time. Better the phone.
Thank you.
No, I don't think so. No, it's not your day today, is it?
Yeah, I told it because. So what was your question?
Oh, shame.
Yeah. It's not in good faith.
Future buyers, because this means this is going to be a risk. That's an ongoing thing. I mean, if somebody is basically just turning, reneging on the deed,
That's up. You contact your MP, your MPP, and you sort of say, hey, what's it like? You ask that question, not as me. I'm just a little real estate lawyer. I mean, you speak to your MPP. You know, Reza used to be the MPP in Richmond Hill, right? And he knows all kinds of people around. You give him a call after talking to him.
But you haven't heard anything of them doing anything to protect public.
I'm sitting in Reza's office now. That's my new office. I'm just with the lawyer.
So then he got the direct line.
No, that's in your head.
All I know is it was Reza's office. Now it's my office. What's going to happen to Liberty is they're going to make more money than ever. With
any obstacle?
Liberty Development, Cosmos. Big deal. They'll make some kind of settlement, and Liberty Development will be laughing all the way to the bank. Well, because again, higher density next door, right? And they can apply to city bond with the higher density. Plus, the units are worth 100 grand more times 11. That's 110 million bucks more.
I know the Italian guy. No, yeah, the lawyer. Yeah, his lawyer. I mean, his lawyer also. Mario. Marco Mario.
Time will fix everything.
Two brothers. The first location was Promenade Road. Yeah. First location was Promenade Road.
And now they're actually going to build one.
And the Sears building will be the first thing we do, right? Tear down the Sears building. It's in the bank. It's already in the bank.
Oh, he has investors.
They don't have a what? Oh, okay, yeah. So non-condo, no 10-day record, yeah.
We're right here, right here.
I'm gonna come next. Okay.
Literally, right across.
I have someone.
Yeah, but they should make a conditional on lawyer's review.
Well, they let anybody do this line and what's it.
But if
Anyway,
it-
they promise it's a walkout basement right now. I found from the floor plan, it's not walkout basement. The basement is just a regular basement. And is there anything
Yeah,
we
but
can do or?
I fought successfully builders on that point. The first thing you have to do is tell the buyer, what city is it in, Richmond Hill? Brampton. First thing you do is tell your buyer to go to the building department of the city of Brampton, okay? And when he goes up to the counter, get the card of whoever he talks to, okay? And ask him, like, what plans were submitted by the builder for this particular, did he originally submit plans with a walkout basement or plans with a walkout basement? Get that information, okay? Get the business card of the guy you talked to, and then go back to the lawyer, because very often you're gonna find that the builder is shopping the buyer. Like, he really never had a plan in the first place for walkout basements, right? And so we've successfully hammered lawyers, and once you sort of, the lawyer, the purchaser sends them a strong letter saying, hey, here's who we spoke to, here's what happened, here's the story, and they know you've done some digging, and found that bullshitting, being fraudulently misrepresenting the property, then things can happen. But if you don't do some digging to get those facts, you or the lawyer for the purchaser will achieve nothing.
That's a good point to do, because they told my the city doesn't allow us to do that.
Yeah, they can say anything they want. But the best thing to do is go into the city, get the business card, talk to them, find out the story, the real story.
Is it okay for them to sell something they don't have?
Everybody does that. Pre-construction sales are all like that.
Like in general, when you don't have
But it's,
something.
but it's in the fine print, that it's conditional upon getting approvals and blah, blah, blah.
But by the law, there is no problem to sell something you don't have.
That's where it goes. Pre-sales are good, question?
Yeah, we have this on, you want to sell as a sign. So 870,000, 20% down. You want to split it, maybe 1 million. So I was thinking,
Well, again, the question down the road by Revenue Canada, because they will look at the deal. Once the deal's done, building it, send it to sign and all this stuff. Revenue Canada will be wondering and asking, okay, so when you signed the deal 4 years ago with the builder, what was your primary intention? Was your primary intention to be an investor? Or in which case HST would be payable, other things I told you about, those 2 things. Or was your intention to use it for some immediate family member? But circumstances change. So you, if you can justify that, there's no HST at the first hand.
so there's only one that is like partner, and you do something like go around it.
And they're not related, they're just investor partners. Well, that's a problem.
That's hard.
Well, do they live together now, those 2 investors? No. Good luck. But it's not a big deal. Because if you look at 13% on the price differential, plus return on it, and you split that in 50-50, and you're gonna deduct it anyway, down the road as expense. It's not a huge deal. Okay?
Yeah, I know. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
So I had that question. I didn't know from the first lawyer, I have to pay the HST and then claim.
Yeah, 419.
There is no way not to pay.
Well, I shouldn't say no 100%. Strangely enough, it's no 97%, okay? Because we have the odd small builder's lawyer who's not with it yet. And so we've had the odd deal where, what? They're allowing it? So it's rare though.
27, that's it.
Yeah.
I should have it for the closing, pay,
All right? No, claim it right away. Well, it depends. Like if are you moving in or some immediate family member? Yeah, but then you claim it right away. It takes 3 months to get it back after sending the application.
Or I can have it 1 year lease.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're an investor. Yeah. All right?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Can I just give you 1 minute? Yeah, here. Oh, take over.
Yes. Well, don't talk to me about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Canada one. Safety, security, Canada's bullshit. 3 numbers, 1-800.
That's after the closing is held.
What I mean, I took it to like Rogers, took it to the time. So. A higher standard of safety than what I'm seeing. So. Then you can't tell me this. I have the number right now. To allow registration of vehicle, it says if it gets approved, and then you buy it. Buy it.
Finish or not?
She said yes.
Oh. Or you could sort of say that call this on the agent before presenting offer, and when you call you, so you have to have a condition of inspection. They fix it basically.
What we will do is that's available first. My dilemma was I was supposed to get the sticker done today. But admissions are being wiped out. Why is she? Because it was supposed to happen by February 21st.
They list properties being sold as is, and any buyer should have a transfer. That's all I can recommend. That's what I got. That's a limited question.
Can I refer them to you? Do they have any concerns? Just go to the court regarding.
Well, we don't do courtroom work. So,
Hi, Stephen.
where do you want this?
You can actually give it to me. I'll put it out here. We have the business cards. I wanted to thank everybody for feedback. Well, I have it. It's going on now. It's going on, but they're your family.
They're for you.
You're going on.
So how was the seminar?
It was really good. I'm actually getting feedback from other offices. Wow, this is great. Wow, it's great. Can I have the slides? Can I have this? Yeah.
All right.
Actually, I was wanting to talk to you one of our applications agents. They have a mode again that goes up to 40 by broadcast as well, but they're all Durham deal.
Doing a seminar tonight. We have an office.
You have an office. Okay, so we have offices in Kennedy, West Hill, but the thing is, if you only see maybe 20 people max, the Pickering one and the Ajax one actually hold 40 people.
I like the conversation.
Right. Well,
I think I would, you're coming with me by 50 tonight, I was Pickering because I gotta be out there for 7 o'clock. Oh, I'm sure. That's not during the week, that's Friday night, date night, Friday night, date night.
Let's have a seat.
So,
Do you guys need-
okay, no, absolutely. I will be emailing you some of the teacher dates for Ajax. Thank you, actually. Great, it was fantastic. Everyone's so happy.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And we need more people.
You know what, they should be coming here, right?
Yeah.
Primarily.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, it was a pleasure. 93 days off market condition.
DocuSign, whatever you're doing. Yeah, and she sent me actually a text message the other day, asking me if I can send her some respect to the house, some trades that work in the house. I just pulled it up, I said it should be in your file or in your lawyer's file, check
But
for that.
don't push your way.
No, I didn't push it, I just said send it to your lawyer, because your lawyer has the file. You should have it. You can call me back, but I didn't.
Because
Yeah, but she's not, if she has the ball. She'll call me and I can there and the partners on it.
I'm good
You know,
with it.
whatever it
You
is.
know-
that
You know her
house-
mindset
I
is,
spent time over there.
yeah.
I spent time there. I spent time there.
Yeah, and she called me too because she said to Rob it was But I've been monitoring 93 days. Any toys? Hey, listen, you know, we have kids, but they don't play with them. I'll tell them.
They're all crazy. It's less, they're all nuts, it's nice.
I know, but you know what? I always say if they're not crazy, we don't want them